the Taliban are going to be armed to the teeth so that when future American soldiers have to go back in to deal with the problem and deal with the incompetence of this administration, how many are going to die? Are we going to have another Pulse nightclub? Are we going to have another San Bernardino? Are we going to have another 9/11 because of that incompetence? Our offices right now are operations centers calling gate guards, calling the Kabul airport, guiding people through, telling them how to avoid Taliban checkpoints, our own Congress. It's unbelievable, the lack of leadership. So I 100% agree. That blood is and will be on Joe Biden's hands, and this Congress will hold him accountable.
Florida Congressman Mike Waltz ripping the Biden administration on the withdrawal from Afghanistan and the Taliban's return to power. The decision made by President Biden has raised many questions about the future of the region, including whether the country will once again become a breeding ground for terrorist groups that threaten the West. Former U.S. Army Green Beret and Florida Congressman Mike Waltz joins me to discuss the final withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan, which has already occurred here. Congressman, appreciate you being with us.
Yeah, thanks, Buck. It's been a terrible couple of months and terrible day for this country.
I have to ask, is this just beyond even your wildest imagination of incompetence for this administration on this issue of the withdrawal? Could you ever have thought this was possible, what we've seen unfold here?
Yeah, it's difficult to even begin. Where do you start on the level of incompetence? But let's just start with the announcement in April of full withdrawal and set that debate aside for a moment. We began, Republican and Democrat, demanding that he start the evacuation of our SIVs, of those who fought with us, and minimizing the American citizen footprint then. The State Department did, that was in April. The State Department didn't even set up a task force to think about it and look at it until June. Meanwhile, we're watching city after city fall, Afghan Army unit after Afghan Army unit surrender. And I called for reintroducing American air power, stopping the Taliban advance to buy us time, and destroying the equipment, the billions of dollars worth of artillery, heavy weapons, sniper rifles, night vision, body armor, you name it, that now is going to fund and arm this Taliban terrorist army that future American soldiers are going to have to deal with. So, and then the final thing was walking away from Bagram with 5,000 of the most hardened ISIS and al-Qaeda terrorists there, with multiple 12,000-foot runways and a defensible perimeter. Instead, they went back into Kabul International in the middle of a city of 4 million people, and we have 13 dead Marines, soldiers, and sailors because of it. So, yeah, this incompetence has caused more American deaths. This war is not done. America is less safe, and eventually we're going to have to go back and deal with a far worse situation.
Do you think that there will be any accountability at the top level of the Pentagon brass, Congressman Waltz? Do you think that anyone's actually going to resign or be fired over this? Because it seems to many of us observing this that if not for a debacle that is this clear, then there can't, when would there be a resignation in disgrace?
Well, you have to understand, though, we have to remind everyone, the same team that's around Biden was the Obama team. That was the team responsible for Benghazi, that thought the Bergdahl trade was a great idea, that recklessly yanked us out of Iraq, that led to the rise of the ISIS caliphate and attacks across Europe and inspired attacks here in the United States, that made concession after concession and sent pallets of cash into Iran for the Iran deal. And there was no accountability then. I don't expect any accountability now. And that's not just the civilians around Biden. Austin at the time was the general in charge of Central Command, in charge of all of that as well. So this kind of band of academics and disaster makers have been together for quite some time. It's incestuous. It's horrible policy. And fundamental to it all is they believe that if they can appease, give, make concession after concession, and be nice enough to our adversaries, eventually they'll be nice enough to us back. And you're seeing that now, that has created an axis of terrorist evil, from Hamas to Iran, to the Taliban, to Pakistan. And the world and America is far less safe. But will there be accountability? Will anybody stand up and say, I screwed up, I'm responsible, and I'm stepping down? I highly doubt it.
There's an article wanted to have you react to, Insider, where they write, will Afghanistan become a safe haven for future terrorist groups? There's zero question Afghanistan will now morph into a durable safe haven for terror groups, they write, like Al-Qaeda, who intend to conduct attacks abroad. The propaganda victory by the Taliban and Al-Qaeda have gained by seizing control of Afghanistan is hard to overstate. Attacks in the West inspired by the outcome in Afghanistan are likely in the coming weeks and months. What do you make of this as a propaganda piece alone for the global jihadists, Congressman? I mean, I know you've actually faced down this enemy. What is this going to do for their recruitment, for their plotting, planning, and external operations?
You know, I received a note yesterday from an ambassador, an ally in the Middle East, and he said, you know, the narrative across the region is jihad has won, American-style democracy has failed. And you bet their recruiting numbers, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Taliban, are through the roof right now. And further, Biden's own intelligence officials just briefed us last week that Al-Qaeda fully intends to rebuild and fully intends to attack the West again. You're going to see the administration try to draw these false distinctions between good, moderate terrorists that we can work with and bad terrorists that they'll work with us against. And anybody who's worked there knows that they have intermarried, intermingled. Yet sometimes certain factions may fight, but the overall movement is dedicated towards jihad against the West. And Biden's politics have just poured fuel on the fire.